All right, guys. I'm thinking about doing a series on carving a cedar canoe. I have carved these prior. Coincidentally, I've never actually carved one out of cedar because I never had the cedar logs. And I will try to link in a photo of a cedar canoe that I carved. These are coastal, sort of Native American coastal style canoes. So I went the other day and I bought 2 cedar logs. This one at this end is 7 inches. Down at the other end, it is 8. And I can't remember, I measured this one, but you know, it is smaller. It might be 6 at one and 7 at the other. Not even 7, probably 5 and 6. And so I'm going to show you the process of basically how I do it, and how I try to adhere to as many traditional ways as possible. But you got to remember that doing a model canoe, I mean, in a way, my theory is if you can carve a model canoe, you can carve a full-scale canoe. The difference is in the work, the amount of work, and how certain things are done. But doing a model, the process is obviously a little different than if you were gonna, you know, do some gigantic log. So, you know, if I was going to do a full-size canoe, I'd attack it with a chainsaw. But I'm not saying that's traditional. I'm saying, you know, how it would be done today. I'm obviously not going to attack this with a chainsaw. At best, I use a chainsaw to cut the log to length. So I'm just going to talk about phase 1 when selecting the log. Obviously, you want one with preferably, you know, no knots in it, no limbs, and if so, very few, because those limbs are weak spots once the canoe's built. Another thing when selecting a tree, and the same is you know, goes to say about a model, is it's basically a ratio of 1 to 8. 1 being the width. So for every inch wide that tree is, or in my case, tiny tree, you're gonna go 8 inches long. So with this guy here, this one, I'm gonna do first. This end is 7 inches. However, the other end is 8 inches. So if I go with that 8 inches, then 8 times 8, 64. So I'm gonna have an 8-inch diameter log there. So I'm gonna measure from that end back this way to 64 inches. And so, yes, the model canoe is gonna be about roughly 64 inches long. Now, I do think, and I've never done this on a model canoe that I have carved, but I do think I might actually try it just to be more authentic. And I've never stretched them, widened them. Those of you who know anything about the canoes, they were filled up with water, hot rocks put in, and a fire was built on either side. And the theory, and it's more than a theory, it is science, is the fires on either side, not too close. You don't want to dry it out fast, but the fires dry the outside wood, yet by heating up the inside, that's how those sides kind of pull out. They pull out towards the fire. And in essence, that's how they widen the canoe in the center significantly. And it's a very interesting process. I don't know how they did it back in the day. I just know from what I've learned on YouTube and tried to pick up from various people, it's very interesting the process they do to get that line that they want, that gunnel line. And I'm gonna try to mock that up on the log when it's time, because there's actually in the center of the canoe, you know, you think that it'd be that nice rounded, but actually bubbles up. And then by the time they widen that canoe, that bubble goes down. And they say that, you know, when you're done with your canoe, the width to length ratio should be more like 1 to 7, because you're gonna widen it considerably in the middle. There again, I don't know how that works on such a small model. I'm about to find out. It may not work. It might crack out and break. I do know that even in doing these, you know, full scale canoes, they do get cracks, and they do repairs. So repairs are not out of the window. So anyway, that's pretty much all I was wanting to talk about for now. Selecting the log, you know, try to get a nice straight log. Problem with cedar, well, problem with every log, is you can tell, like with this one, you know, I've got a crack. And of course, I'm going to line that crack up with the top. So that way, you know, in the canoe, most of this would be carved out. With this guy here, there's a kind of a checking there, one there, and then a slight one there in the middle. So there again, though I don't think I'm going to use this side, we'll go down and have a look at the other side, see if we're in any better shape. So on this side, basically, it's just this one big crack. So of course, I'm going to put that up towards the top. So I think I can only get one canoe out of the bigger log. The smaller one, I know I can at least get 2, maybe 3, I don't know. Proportion, I see a lot of people who carve them, but proportionately they look more like toys. I'm going to try to put a picture of the one I carved and kind of show you the proportion that I'm going to shoot for with these. And as I go, I'm going to try to talk about more traditional methods. Whether I take that method or not won't be the thing. I'm just going to try to talk about, you know, what I've learned in my learning process. And I know some people will say, hey, no, it's not done that way, or it's done this way, or, you know, it's done however way you, the carver, choose to do it, really. And I'm sure a couple hundred years ago, I'm sure there was numerous ways to carve a canoe. I'm sure they didn't all do it the exact same way. There's more than one way to skin a cat. At the end of the day, guys, it's about just waking up and getting something done, doing something, and not being a couch, you know, somebody sitting at the couch on the sideline, getting on and downing every single person that puts videos on YouTube on how they do something. 9 times out of 10, that person that has something to say is probably not the person actually getting up to do anything. So there again, I'm not saying I do it correctly. It's something I enjoy, so I get up and I do it, you know. But I thought it just might be kind of cool to run a series on from start to finish and talk about it slightly traditionally, you know, what they would have done at each point. So next video, actually it'll be a part of this video, I'm going to just show marking out the tree. We'll get the bark off of it, and I'll show you kind of how I mark out the top profile. I'll just call it the top profile, because that's ultimately what you start carving is that top profile. You don't dig it in, you just get that top profile. You know, things I've read too is back in the day, Native Americans would carve the underside of their canoe, the outside of it, and the shape that they wanted. And then they'd let them sit for a whole season before carving the inside out. I'm not going to obviously do that, but there again, just throwing some information out there that I have read. So we'll go from there. These obviously weren't trees. These were meant for fence posts. So, all right. Nice 20-degree morning here this morning. A little bit frosty out. Got the dogs out. Let them run around a bit. There they go. All right, we're gonna get on to cutting and removing bark for our little canoe project. All right, so since it's 8 inches in diameter, we're gonna start the cut at 64. And might give it an extra inch or so. We're probably gonna cut, I think when it's all done, you know, the canoe could end up being 62 inches, but we're gonna go 65 for right now. Let's see, right in there. We'll see if we can't get this chainsaw started in 20-degree weather. I believe it has fuel. Yeah, not very much. Let's see. Do we have enough to make the cut? That's the ultimate question. Not sure, it's a close one. Let's go find some fuel and oil. Alright. Give this saw some oil. I was gonna winterize the saw, just like I was gonna winterize it last winter. Never got to it last winter. I don't suppose I'm gonna get to it this winter. It really is a good idea. It really saves on the gaskets. I did go to the store to try to buy some winterizer to a local farm store up here, and the guy tried to sell me just gas additive. I'm like, no, that's not the same thing. And one of these days I need to mark on my containers. I got so many different containers with different oil mix ratios. And what I've been trying to go off of is the color of tint. They all seem to be slightly different. Who knows if this thing's gonna start in 20-degree weather. Got the log roughly cut. I'm going to use a draw knife. This is one I got, actually I was given when I worked for Yellowstone Park. So just going to remove the bark without really hopefully digging into the wood. Bug hole. Alright guys, day one of canoe, and that's as far as I got. Got the log. It took me a lot of math and a lot of geometry trying to figure out what's going to look proportionally correct, because I don't want to end up looking like a cartoon canoe. I see a lot of them look that way. Originally, I was out to this line here. Same thing on the other side, which was going to be 61.5 inches wide. Mathematically, I had to bring it in on both sides. So that will be the new tip of the canoe. So I'll have to cut that off. Same exact thing down at the other end. And it is now going to be 28 inches, or 58 inches long will be the total canoe length. 58 inches by about 8.5 inches wide. And then a depth line on the side, I know the line's up here, but that's just approximate, is going to be about here, which is 4 inches. So it should be about 4 inches in that general area. The reason why that line is just temporarily is you can see I've got drawn this line. That'll be the top of the canoe. And so I've got to flatten it out, and then once I get this down to this plane here, then I'll redraw these lines, and it'll widen them out a little bit. So we're definitely going to plane the top first, instead of just coming here and cutting this profile, because we want to get the top nice and finished how it's going to be, and then we'll worry about cutting the sides. That's it for day one and first step of the cedar log canoe.